Hi, this is an ordinary voice of spiritual ventriloquism. You are listening to the dummy himself. So, had a brother asked me to comment on the text of Matthew 8. Was looking for additional understanding. I hope I do contribute something to you, sir, my brother, and anyone else who has ears to hear and wants to hear. And here we go. We're going to go with Matthew 8. And the text verse that we're talking about is verse 21 and 22. Okay? And we'll read that. Another of Jesus' disciples, or another of his disciples, said to him, Master, first let me go and bury my father. Okay? Yeshua said this. Or he said this to Yeshua. Another one of his disciples said to him, Master, his taught ones. Now, this disciple is a taught one, so he's not a Johnny come lately. He's already familiar with Jesus on some level. Okay? I wasn't there. I'm not a witness. I'm a believer. Okay? He said, Master, first let me go and bury my father. Now, the reason why he said this was in the preceding verse 20. Now, let's go back to 19. He's standing there in the same crowd as a scribe then approached and said to him, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Okay? And it's amazing. Jesus' response to the scribe was, Foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. So he's basically saying, why are you going to follow me? I'm homeless. All right. So, another one of his disciples said to him, standing by, he's a disciple, and another. So I'm certain that the scribe in 19 is also a disciple, a taught one. He's listening and is familiar with Jesus' teaching on some level. Okay? All right. He said, verse 21, he said, but Yeshua said to him, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. Okay? All right. Let the dead bury their own dead. Okay. Was Jesus being toxic here? Was he basically saying, don't you worry about them dead relatives of you, pick up your cross and follow me and blah, 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 blah. He didn't say that here. Okay? What was he saying? He was telling this disciple, obviously, to follow him, which he'd already been doing. Okay? So, I think Jesus was telling him, let me give you a backdrop on this. Okay? A backdrop on this text is that there's three things could have been going on. His father wasn't dead, actually, but was ill or ailing in his ailing years. That brings up a whole set of Torah responsibilities that you can't dance around. You can't get around it. Okay? All right? You can't choose one hill to die on and go to the other hill to die on. You can only die once, right? Okay, so his father wasn't really dead yet. He was just ailing and close to death, maybe indefinite amount of time. The other is that obviously he was dead and he was going to have a funeral for him later. Okay. The third option is that he was going to go to, his father was already been dead for an extensive amount of time, probably at least a year, and he was going to go back to his family tomb to finish the funeral by placing his father's bones into the pile of bones that was being accumulated in the family tomb from his ancestors and maybe brothers or whatever, okay? Because that's what they would do. They would put the body in the tomb, and that they would take, they would seal the tomb up. A year later, roughly, when everything had completely decayed, was no longer really an unclean thing, per se. Wasn't stinky in there or anything anymore. That they would go back in and take the bones and the skeletons and the skull of their father, and they would put them in a pile in another part of the tomb with the other bones. And that is replete throughout Scripture on the burial of people in tombs. Okay? So what he did was he probably had to go perform the final part of his father's burial, and then he was willing. He was wanting to follow Jesus right there, but he couldn't yet because of that. Now, I think the man had a legitimate situation, right? He said that this he had Corbana. He had to honor his father and his mother, and until you complete everything and your obligations to your parents, you're not off the hook, and you're going to be held accountable for that. And your days may not be long on the land if you don't do it. Okay? So, I think that was the case. Okay? I don't think it was an immediate funeral that he had to take place. I don't think he had to go back into his father's final days to take care of him. Jesus said to him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." So apparently, this man probably had brothers and sisters that could do this. Now, whether he was a firstborn and he was hard bound to do that or not, I don't know. More than likely he was not, because he could allow his brothers and sisters to do that part of the funeral for him, with the eldest son being the officiator of that ritual. Okay, it would have been perfectly in order. So Jesus wasn't criticizing, calling them damned, and they don't believe, and you do, and you've seen the light, brother, and you're blessed, and they're cursed. He didn't go into none of that nonsense of blaspheming people, whether they had awakened to the spirit of life or not. I know that this brother, this person here, this disciple, was in fact familiar with Jesus' teachings, because it said he was a taught one. He was a disciple, not a random guy coming up for the first time, having his ear itching. Okay? But he was a man that was being taught. Could have been, a very recent event. I don't know. Again, I said I'm a believer, not a witness. But I would tell you this, that Jesus was not running this man's father down, or his family down, telling him he needed to get away from him and follow him. He was telling him to follow him. He wasn't interested in his family as much as he was interested in this man right here, right now. Now, how all that came out, we don't know, because this text stops there. We don't know the decision the guy made. He may have said, okay, and he went back and did his father's burial anyway. We don't know, okay? Or finished the funeral. Don't know. It could have been in the period of mourning, too, which usually lasted like 30 days, okay? And his father could have recently died, may have already been in the tomb. Again, we don't know. We do know that that Jesus did teach children to honor their father and their mother. We do know that Jesus taught that men should perform honor of their father and mother, and not just use this term Corbana loosely and go and try to go around the Torah and offer a gift to the temple and then say, okay, I've done everything I'm obligated to do. You go take care of yourself from here on out, because I am a gift to you. So my offering a gift on your part, you should be honored that I did that, and I am now absolved from taking care of you. Parents, father, mother. Is that what Jesus taught? Is that what Jesus taught? If he did teach that you should abandon your family, abandon your mother and your father completely. I never did abandon my family. I always had talked to them throughout the years. I didn't necessarily visit them, or they came and visited me. I would call them to see how they were doing and things like that. Okay, they were pretty well content with the way things were, and that's fine. But I did not abandon them. I did not curse them. I did not say, you're going to hell and I'm saved. Yeah, right. That's not a lot of salvation you got if that's your attitude. So, I want to go back to one text in this verse that I want to cite, because I talked about the gospel cue, which is a gospel that really doesn't exist, but in the minds and in the study of the scholars. Okay, not the self-appointed, the mama called, the daddy sent, not the people who made themselves pastors or whatever, prophets. There aren't any of those today. There are people who have the gift of prophecy, but there are no prophets. Okay. In that text, I want to go back to show you this, that there are things in the scripture that you need to understand. That when you read, for instance, Matthew and Luke, mostly, these are the variant texts that comes from what is known to be the oldest manuscript that we have any records of, and it's only a fragmentary portion of the book of what they call Mark. Okay, and because the words are there and it is dated to the early 2nd century, like 205, 210, somewhere in there, CE. You can tell by reading Matthew and Luke that those books relied heavily on Mark. Again, Mark didn't write the book. As a matter of fact, these books are far outside the scope of the 1st century. And for the most part, these names were pinned on these Besorah or Gospels as early as, or as late as the 3rd and even possibly the 4th century. Okay? And what I'm trying to cite here is in this text is that it said that that there was a servant, right, or a centurion. It says in verse 5, when he came and entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, appealing to him, and said, Master, my servant is lying at home paralyzed in terrible distress. And he said to him, I will come to him and heal him. Okay? So maybe Jesus was looking for a house to hang out in. I don't know. Because later on he says birds have holes, foxes have holes, birds have nests, Son of Man don't have anywhere to lay his head. Okay? So the centurion answered, Lord, I'm not worthy, and we all know about that. Okay? The problem with Matthew is when you go to Luke, it doesn't say the centurion came to him. In Luke, it says that 2 of the centurion's servants came to Jesus and told him this narrative of what was going on about his servant that was sick. So, which one is it? Is it one centurion who came himself, or was it the 2 ambassadors, the 2 representatives that he sent to Jesus, that was perfectly acceptable in those days also. So either way, I mean, Jesus healed the centurion's servant, okay? And he also commended the centurion for his great faith. They had enough faith that he knew that he was so powerful he didn't even have to come to him because he wasn't worthy, all right? Roman centurion. It's amazing how the Samaritans and the Romans are continuously thrown in the face of the children of the bridegroom. They're supposedly the children of the bridegroom and the children of the kingdom. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. When you read the New Testament, especially the Gospels, you may not be reading every comparative text or variant text. It can't be both. It's got to be one or the other. You got to decide which is best, and you got to run with it. Okay? And there's no fault indemnification clause if you get it wrong. Okay? Because, somebody didn't weigh in on this, okay? So you do the best you can, and you be a believer, not a witness. Did I believe this event happened? Yes. Do I believe it happened how it happened in Matthew and in Luke? No. And getting back to the question at hand, which was verse 21, or verse 20, verse 21, another of his disciples said to him, Lord, first let me go bury my father. But Jesus said to him, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. If you have no concise textual timestamps on the process of burial and of the Old Testament saints, as is replete through Genesis and the Torah, then you may arrive at the wrong conclusion, thinking that his father had just died and he freaked out and ran to Jesus, but just so happened to be one of his disciples, so at least he knew who to run to. All right, it could have been something like that. The father may not have died yet. The father had just died. That's a possibility too. Or the father had long been dead, but the burial process had not been made complete. And I hope this brings you some knowledge and some understanding to that text. Shalom.